Hey guys, welcome back. Before we get started, be sure to send your comments or questions to aiinyourjob@gmail.com. Let me know what you do for work and how susceptible you think your job is to being augmented or replaced by AI. Also, please subscribe and rate the show on whatever platform you're using to listen. We've gotten some interesting comments so far. We'll talk about at least one of those today. This week, my plan was to talk about both blue-collar and white-collar work and try to work out how AI will augment, if not completely replace, both kinds of work. However, this has been a very news-heavy week in regards to AI, and I think we need to look at these stories because we're seeing decisions being made on AI in real time that will have a major impact on all of us. So today I want to concentrate solely on those headlines, and we'll get into blue-collar and white-collar work next time. So our first headline is from CNN, quote, "Mom believes scammers cloned her daughter's voice in a fake kidnapping," end quote. So this is one of the first of, I think, what will be many deepfake cases that we come across. I think it was in the initial episode we talked about this very thing. If the technology exists, and it does, what's to stop anyone from trying to capitalize on a parent's fear over the safety of their child? In this case, the mom was able to put together that the whole thing was a scam, and she was able to avoid it. The call in question that she got was a targeted ransom by some nefarious actors. We don't know who they are. But the child's voice was cloned and used in this deep fake ransom attempt. But the daughter in question was on a ski trip at the time. And she was absolutely fine. So I guess the worst was avoided here. But if nothing is done in the short term, there are going to be many phone calls coming to a mom or a dad who won't be able to tell that they are being scammed. The technology's already really good, and all it really takes is your voice being online somewhere. If you have at least 3 seconds of your voice in a video somewhere online or in an audio recording, then guess what? Your voice could be used against you and those people around you. And what's even more wild, I guess, not so much for ransom, is that I saw some technology being touted this week that will record your voice, and you can use that voice to speak back to you in any number of languages. So I could record my voice in English, and while I don't speak Polish, I could very well say something to you via AI in that language. So we're going to move straight in. I got several headlines to talk about this week, so let's move in straight to number 2. From CBS News, quote, "Screenwriters want to stop AI from taking their jobs, but studios want to see what the technology can do," end quote. So you may be aware, but writers across Hollywood went on strike earlier this week, which means you'll be seeing reruns on TV until this is resolved. There's been a great deal of mainstream news about it over the past few weeks. Late-night talk show hosts have recorded segments talking about the importance or how integral writers are to their shows, essentially showing solidarity with those writers. Writers in Hollywood have been marginalized to some extent with the advent of streaming. While streaming has opened the door for new writers, it's come with a price. One writer stated, "It's hard to find steady-paying jobs in television, and that writers are expected to do a lot of free work in development just to be considered for a paid gig. Writers are also regularly asked to deliver numerous iterations of scripts but aren't paid for every draft." The Writers Guild of America, which is the union leading the strike or protest, said the immediate concern behind the strike is AI. Specifically, the union wants its collective bargaining contract to guarantee that, number one, AI won't write or rewrite literary material. Number two, AI won't be used as source material. And number three, union-covered material won't be used in the training of AI. the WGA, the Writers Guild of America, said that the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, which is the group representing 8 major studios in the talks, rejected that proposal and instead offered this. They offered to have annual meetings to discuss advancements in technology. Ouch. That does not sound promising for the writers. And you might say it's a bold move by the union to strike it all when a technology exists which could do their job for them at a fraction of the cost that it takes to pay writers. From that same article, a producer with One Door Studios stated that AI is already playing a role in refining script drafts and generating promotional materials, storyboards, and other visual references for projects. Quote, AI is helping us move fast. Typically, you would say, now go back and redraw these storyboards and work on these characters, and that might take you a month. But now you can have those updates within a few minutes. End quote. One Door plans to give the AI tools co-creator credits for the series. And still, this producer doesn't agree that AI will take away jobs from screenwriters or hurt their financial prospects. But it's wild to think that a technology or an AI is going to be getting a writing credit for a TV series or a movie, but I guess that's where we're at now. Our third headline is from the Washington Post. Quote, IBM could replace 7,800 jobs with AI, CEO says, end quote. IBM said it expects to pause hiring for jobs that artificial intelligence could do, indicating that the potentially groundbreaking technology is beginning to disrupt how humans work. Arvind Krishna, the company's chief executive, estimated up to 7,800 jobs at the company could be affected, according to an interview with Bloomberg News. And hiring in back office roles, such as human resources, could be at risk of being suspended or slowed down. Now, it's important to note that they're not firing anyone or letting anyone go because of AI, at least at this point. They're simply not hiring for available positions because of AI. So this is yet another way that AI will impact jobs. Why would or should a company hire for positions from this point on that can be automated within a few years' time? A spokesman for IBM said that there's, quote, no blanket hiring pause in place. We're being very selective when filling jobs that don't directly touch our clients or technology, end quote. So here's a major global corporation saying this is happening. There are jobs here that we think this technology can do better than humans and at a fraction of the cost. Of IBM's 26,000 non-customer facing roles, Krishna said he could easily see 30% of that being replaced by AI and automation over the next 5 years. In this particular interview, he cited human resources being impacted by AI, saying that menial tasks such as providing employment verification letters or shifting employees between departments could be fully automated, though other human resources functions such as evaluating workforce productivity would be less likely for automation. Again, let's remember that increased efficiencies will eventually lead to job displacement for some. Your HR department of 22 people may only now need to be 9. And this will, of course, have a cascading effect across the workforce. I listened to the most recent episode of the Hard Fork podcast, some technology podcast from the New York Times. They talked about this same article. They brought up a few points I thought were interesting. The article cited HR, human resources specifically, and the guys on the podcast talked about how many people make a good middle-class living from the HR profession. Many do, obviously, and this story should give all HR professionals pause, especially those in school right now. It might be time to rethink the future. And the guys on the podcast also talked about people in HR somewhat flippantly and how they should probably find something else to do. I think a major reason I started this podcast is because I've heard these conversations for years by folks in tech or media talking about how the workforce would be impacted, but doing so in a somewhat flippant manner. I mean, and that's always rubbed me the wrong way. I mean, to think that a 36 or 46 or 56-year-old HR representative can simply go and find something else to do or reinvent themselves is problematic. Certainly some can, but it won't be easy for the large part of society. I left a company about 5 years ago after being there for 8 years to move to my current company, and it was terrifying. Obviously, I didn't tell anyone that, but underneath, like a duck on the water, my wheels were spinning to leave everything for something you don't know really anything about. It's quite the change, and it is frightening. And to think that people are going to be able to give up their professions of 10, 20, 30, 40 years and jump into a new field, I think that's going to require a massive effort from the public sector and the private sector. So I think the government will obviously need to institute programs for people to transition to new professions. I think our churches, synagogues, mosques, all our social institutions need to be gearing their people up for this massive change that's going to happen, because it's really going to mess with people's identities when they have their livelihoods taken from them. But enough venting. Another point they brought up on the Hard Fork podcast was the possible rise of unions for white-collar jobs. This is a thought I really haven't entertained at all. It could very well be that we start to see movement from white-collar professions unionizing to halt the advance of AI, and we'll talk more about that in the coming weeks. Our fourth headline is from Bloomberg, quote, Walmart is using AI to negotiate the best price with some vendors, end quote. So Walmart is utilizing an AI from a company called Pactum, Pactum, to handle some of its negotiations on products. Obviously, this was something that was done solely by humans until a few months ago. Walmart does state that they have not let any workers go as a result of the technology. The technology is being used to complement procurement professionals. So far, the use of the technology has netted Walmart an additional 3% savings in their negotiations. The products associated with the negotiations thus far have been somewhat benign products, or those products that don't require a great deal of knowledge. So think commodities or products that are very straightforward. In this case, the article cited shopping carts as one of the things being handled by AI. And while Walmart is only augmenting procurement professionals' jobs with this technology at the moment, how soon will it be good enough to replace those jobs altogether? Moreover, of the suppliers surveyed about using the technology to negotiate, those suppliers prefer dealing with the AI versus person-to-person negotiations. So for our fifth headline this week is from NBC News, and it is an older headline, but I've had it flagged for a month or so now. Since it relates to work, I wanted to include it here. So, quote, Levi's will test AI-generated clothing models to, quote, increase diversity. Levi's claimed the tech would be used to supplement human models rather than completely replace them, end quote. I think this article showed up sometime in late March, and that news caused quite the pushback you could anticipate on social media, and more specifically, pushback from models. I don't know how big the modeling industry is, but those who depend on it for income have got to be worried now that this initial warning shot has been fired, and it's only a matter of time before other brands start experimenting with AI models. So outside of the example of the models in that headline, the other stories from this week specifically, writers in Hollywood, HR professionals at IBM, and procurement professionals at Walmart. So really, I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg. And like we've talked about previously, is hitting white-collar professionals first. And it looks like the technology is being used to augment, specifically in the case of Walmart, augment, like we talked about, and make those procurement folks at Walmart more efficient in their other task as the first step. And I think the second step or third or fourth will be just those folks being replaced outright to AI. Don't know how long that'll be, obviously, but I think it's the natural progression of this technology. So our sixth headline this week is from Futurism.com. Quote, online tutoring company stock crashes as ChatGPT steamrolls its business, end quote. So the company is called Chegg, and Chegg was originally a textbook rental site that morphed into a tutoring site and exploded in popularity during the pandemic. While touting itself as a tutoring site, some would call Chegg a cheating site, as it aids students studying remotely to cheat where they wouldn't have been able to prior to studying remotely. In any case, ChatGPT has essentially crushed their business model, as ChatGPT is free, at least version 3.5 of it is, and students can access it without paying a subscription fee, as you have to do on Chegg's website. So why pay for Chegg when you can get ChatGPT for free? In 2021, Forbes put Chegg's value at around $12 billion. But earlier this week, the company's stock price tanked to $9 a share based on a loss of users. The stock did rebound slightly later in the week, and as a result of the fall in stock prices, Chegg announced that it was getting ready to integrate AI into its own services, but it may be too little too late. So here's a situation in which AI or ChatGPT didn't displace workers by virtue of directly taking over jobs, much like we saw with IBM not firing workers. They're just not going to hire any new workers for the jobs they deem that AI can do within a couple of years. But if this continues, Chegg will obviously be forced to cut labor in order to remain profitable, adding to the ways that this technology is disrupting the labor market. So our seventh headline this week is from the New York Times, and I think it's probably the biggest headline of the week. Quote, the godfather of AI leaves Google and warns of dangers ahead, end quote. Geoffrey Hinton, Dr. Geoffrey Hinton, who, as the headline suggests, is regarded as the godfather of AI, and he left his position at Google largely so he could speak out about the risk of AI. He stated that part of him now regrets his life's work. So from the New York Times concerning language networks or large language models, quote, Dr. Hinton thought it was a powerful way for machines to understand and generate language, but it was inferior to the way humans handled language. Then, last year, as Google and OpenAI built systems using much larger amounts of data, his views have changed. He still believes the systems were inferior to the human brain in some ways, but he thought they were eclipsing human intelligence in others. Maybe what is going on in these systems, he said, is actually a lot better than what is going on in the brain. As companies improve their AI systems, he believes they become increasingly dangerous. Look at how it was 5 years ago and how it is now, he said. Take the difference and propagate it forwards, and that's scary. Until last year, he said Google acted as a proper steward for the technology, careful not to release something that might cause harm. But now that Microsoft has augmented its Bing search engine with a chatbot, challenging Google's core business, Google is racing to deploy the same kind of technology. The tech giants are locked in a competition that might be impossible to stop, Dr. Hinton said. His immediate concern is that the internet will be flooded with false photos, videos, and text. Where have we seen that? And the average person will not be able to know what is true anymore. He is also worried that AI technologies will, in time, upend the job market. Today, chatbots like ChatGPT tend to complement human workers, but they could replace paralegals, personal assistants, translators, and others who handle repetitive tasks. It takes away the drudge work, he said, and it might take away more than that. Down the road, he's worried that future versions of the technology pose a threat to humanity because they often learn unexpected behavior from the vast amounts of data they analyze. This becomes an issue, he said, as individuals and companies allow AI systems not only to generate their own computer code, but actually run that code on their own. And he fears a day when truly autonomous weapons, like killer robots, will become reality. The idea that this stuff could actually get smarter than people, a few people believe that, he said. But most people thought it was way off. And I thought it was way off. I thought it was 30 to 50 years or even longer away. Obviously, I no longer think that, end quote. Many other experts, including many of his students and colleagues, say this threat is hypothetical. But Dr. Hinton believes that the race between Google and Microsoft and others will escalate into a global race that will not stop without some sort of global regulation. But that may be impossible, he said. Unlike the nuclear weapons, he said, there is no way of knowing whether companies or countries are working on the technology in secret. The best hope is for the world's leading scientists to collaborate on ways of controlling the technology. I don't think they should scale this up more until they have an understanding of whether they can control it. Dr. Hinton said that when people used to ask him how he could work on a technology that was potentially dangerous, he would paraphrase Robert Oppenheimer, who led the U.S. effort to build the atomic bomb. When you see something that is technically sweet, you go ahead and you do it. But he doesn't say that anymore. That article was in the New York Times, written by Cade Metz, and there's more to it. It's alarming. If the godfather of AI sees this potential, and he quit his job at one of the most powerful companies in the world to warn the public about it, that says a lot. So for our eighth and final headline of the week, it's also from the New York Times. I told you it was a busy week in the week of AI. Quote, White House pushes tech CEOs to limit risk of AI, end quote. A group of AI researchers met with Vice President Kamala Harris at the White House a few days ago to discuss AI and the risk posed by AI. Represented were leaders from Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, and Anthropic. These are obviously the largest of the players in the world of AI, but notables missing from this meeting were folks that have been raising the alarm the loudest for a stop in AI research. And I'm thinking of folks like Elon Musk or Max Tegmark or Eliezer Yudkowsky. Those are the kind of folks I want in these meetings because I think that they could adequately convey the risk. And while I think these leaders at these larger companies know the risk, they obviously have ulterior motives, right, to be the first to market with these tools that could be detrimental for society. But from that article, VP Harris told the tech leaders that, quote, the private sector has an ethical, moral, and legal responsibility to ensure the safety and security of their products. And every company must comply with existing laws to protect the American people, end quote. The White House said it had impressed on the companies that they should address the risk of new AI developments In a statement after the meeting, the administration said there had been frank and constructive discussion about the desire for the companies to be more open about their products, the need for AI systems to be subjected to outside scrutiny, and the importance that those products be kept away from bad actors. The article goes on to state that this essentially boils down to finger pointing. The White House is telling technology companies to act in a responsible way with the developing of this technology, while these technology companies have said that elected officials need to take steps to set the rules for a fast-growing space. I think what we've heard today from Dr. Hinton tells us that's true. Legislation needs to happen in conjunction and with support from the tech companies in the short term to regulate AI in a responsible way. And while the meeting was a positive step and may have helped build momentum in the conversation, it did absolutely nothing to ensure safety into the technology being built today. There are already people cloning voices in an effort to extract ransom money from unsuspecting parents who think their children have been taken. I wouldn't rely on a private company motivated by stock prices to act in a moral or ethical manner. As Dr. Hinton stated, these companies that were at this meeting are locked in a race to be the first to develop these tools. They don't have any incentive not to develop this as they see fit and as fast as they see fit. But let me digress a little bit. As we wrap these headlines up, let's talk about job disruption, as this is a podcast about job disruption. Let's remember that this is just the beginning. I think we could say that about AI in general, as we are just opening the door to a new world and things that will begin and are beginning to change at an alarming rate. Concerning work, though, specifically, this technology like ChatGPT was just made public, within the last few months, and already CEOs are looking for ways to implement it. And that's good. They probably should be. But there are going to be monumental impacts on the workforce as a result. And based on this week's AI news, it looks like these conversations will be happening at an increasing rate, so hopefully solutions will present themselves as we go along. One last thought for this week. Last week I covered a story from Futurism.com that had an interview in it with a director named Joe Russo, a Hollywood director. And in that article, he stated that he expects that society will be able to create full Hollywood quality type movies with AI technology within the next 2 years. I think I even said that it was hard to wrap your head around such a technology within such a short time frame. And I bring it up because I received some feedback or skepticism, really, from some listeners on that idea. And I'll admit, it does seem like science fiction and that we're worlds apart from being able to do something like that. But I suppose showing some evidence of the technology should help convince those skeptics. There's a few major AI-created commercials floating around the web. The first and most famous one is a advertisement for a fictitious pizza company. You can go to YouTube and search for pepperoni hug spot or AI-created pizza commercial, and you'll find it. And I'll include a link in the show notes. Now, I want to reiterate that this is a commercial created strictly with AI-powered technology. There were no actors, no script writers for this. It's completely artificial. And yet it's extremely impressive and unnerving. I should say that the commercial isn't 100%. There are some notable issues with the AI-created humans. In some cases, the people have too many fingers on one hand, or they're missing part of an arm, or in one instance, a woman is eating the pizza on the plate and eating the plate itself. So it's safe to say that it's a bit comical, and it's easy to dismiss because of those flaws. But doing so would be a mistake, in my opinion. As weird as this AI commercial might look, it's only going to improve, and it will improve quickly. And looking at that commercial, the claims made about AI-generated movies doesn't seem that far-fetched. So that's it for this week. Next week, we're we'll try and get back on track to discuss white collar and blue collar work. But in the meantime, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening. We'll talk next time.